Hi everyone, my name is Itimi, but you know that already. You're welcome to another episode of Founders Connect. On this show, I have amazing conversations with entrepreneurs and senior operators in the African tech ecosystem. Today, I'm having a conversation with the queen of African tech PR. Literally, I think every time anybody has spoken about African tech, PR and comes to the same sentence, her name pops up, and it's no other person but Jessica. Hi, Jess.
Hey, peace.
How
Thanks
you
for having
doing?
me. I'm okay. Thanks for having
I'm
you.
very excited.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've always heard about you, and then knowing you, I think maybe last 1 year.
Yeah,
or
last
two.
couple of years since you've been in
Yeah,
London.
so I'm really excited to dive into your journey, and we're literally just going to start. So I like to start from the beginning. So tell me about you. What was growing up like? Where did you grow up? What was family like?
I grew up in between Devon and London.
Okay.
So I lived with my
So
mum.
born here?
Born in the UK. I grew up in Devon, lived with my mum most of the year, and then in the school holidays, I would come and live in London with my dad. I spent a huge amount of time living in Wimbart Road.
Oh, okay.
Which is the street in Brixton, which is the street my grandparents and my dad grew up in.
So was it named after your family?
It was very much so.
That must have been nice.
Yeah, I mean, it was very personal.
Okay.
When I set up the company, it was very, very personal. So yeah, I lived this kind of like dual life, Devon countryside and then Brixton in the holidays. Yeah, kind of like really like great parents, tons of friends that I'm still really close with, pretty good at school, into kind of creative stuff, writing. I'd say average child, but I don't know, I got...
What was your favorite memory as a child?
Tricky one. I used to travel a lot. I had lots of travels with my dad. I think that's where I kind of get it from now as well. So lots of trips. Used to travel to France a lot, travel to America. Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily one favorite memory. Just, yeah, trips.
Just lots of trips. And what was education like? So where did you go to school and how did you get into your career?
So I went to state school for secondary school, Exmouth Community College. Was there for 6 years, then I went to sixth form college. And then after that, I went to Manchester University. I started off doing...
What did you study?
I started off doing history and French, but I didn't like the French side of things. I'd spent a lot of time living in France, actually, and I'd wanted to be fluent in French, but I didn't like the French history. It wasn't really for me, so I quit the French and just did straight history. Interestingly, I was living on the UMIST campus, which is the science campus in Manchester as well, so I lived right in the city centre of Manchester, so I had my arts friends, and then I also had like my science crew as well, worked in bars, like kind of really like super social life, did lots of work experience whilst I was at university as well. I was convinced I wanted to be a journalist.
Oh, okay.
So worked for student magazines, all sorts, lots and lots of like practice in terms of writing, researching, etc. as well.
When did you start your official corporate career? Because I mean, a lot of the things that you did in school was like internships, freelancing, school communities. What was the first corporate job?
So the first one I actually managed to get after a bit of a failed journalist career. And this is actually an interesting segue as to how I got into African tech.
Yeah.
Sorry, after my BA in history, I did a master's in religion and politics, classic masters. The two subjects you should never talk about at dinner parties. I'd done some work experience on various magazines, like lifestyle magazines in Manchester. I was an editor for one. And then I picked up a magazine called Brash, which is a student magazine. And it was run by this guy called Jason Njoku. So I emailed him. I was like, hey, like the magazine, we should chat. He was like, yep, let's chat. We met. And then he brought me on board to basically launch more of a lifestyle magazine for kind of young professionals in Manchester. So Jason and I worked together with a guy called Paul from this kind of like warehouse in Manchester. We were just the most obnoxious, ridiculous, over the top group of people. I think that we were such an odd mixed match group of people. Like when we walked into a room, you would just notice us. But there was like a lot of like, you know, a lot of love, friendship, silliness, and we put together some really great content, but we couldn't monetize it. We just couldn't monetize it.
Why couldn't you?
I think it was still quite early days of internet. So it was still very much physical publication, trying to get advertising for a physical publication. It was glossy. Yeah, it was quite a lot. And I think, you know, Jason was still quite young, you know, and he was the one who was kind of in charge of monetizing it. And his hustle was a lot, but it just wasn't quite enough in those days. And yeah, he was, you know, maybe only like 23 then. And then when the magazine folded...
How long did you guys do it for before you said this is not working?
Maybe 6 months.
Okay.
Could be even less. It wasn't even that long. I don't know, but it was such an important and pivotal part of my life. It feels longer, but I don't think it was that long. But, you know, it was kind of like our uni group of friends as well. So it was also, you know, Bastian, who was Jason's co-founder, went to Manchester University. So he was kind of part of this kind of Brash crew as well. So we did it for like maybe 6 months, and then Jason didn't have the money to pay me. And I was really annoyed because he promised he would do. So I spent, for about 2 weeks on and off, I went to the offices every day and I sat in the office until he gave me some money. Some days it was like £50, other days it was more. It was brutal, but it's the sort of thing that Jason would have done as well. You know, when people are like real meets real.
Yeah.
So then there was
that must have formed an important part of your relationship and how you guys talk to each other, right?
Yeah, there was like, it created like a chasm, right? We fell out. We didn't speak for ages. Jason felt, I think sad and upset that his business had kind of like imploded. Then I was giving him grief, all sorts of stuff, and it was like kind of close because we had this like uni group of friends as well. This is what happens when you like try and do business in your 20s or very, very early 20s, and with friends, and without any real structure actually. So we didn't speak for a bit, and then I then got a job. I think I was talking to this woman in the toilets of a pub in Manchester, and she offered me some work experience in a PR agency. Took it, went there for a couple of weeks, and then I applied for a job in a PR agency in Manchester, and that was my first kind of B2B corporate agency job, and I was there for about a year and a half, I think.
Yeah. Tell me about the journalism career that you said didn't quite pan out. Like, how did that go? What did you try to do that just didn't work out before you ended up in PR?
So I think it was kind of the beginning of the end of print magazines and print publications before the internet got really big. So this was like 2004, 2005. So I think I was just kind of unfortunate. Maybe my writing wasn't good enough. Maybe I wasn't out there enough. Maybe I wasn't writing enough content to really, be able to monetize it. But, regional journalism is really hard.
Right.
But in my head, I thought, I've got a good CV. Straight after my master's, I went and worked at the BBC in the religion and ethics department for a month. So my CV was actually pretty strong.
Yeah.
But I think probably deep down, I just didn't give it enough. I didn't really, really pursue it as hard as I wanted to, or I should have, in order to make a real success out of it.
Yeah, and were you trying this as an independent, because you said you were not writing enough?
Yeah.
Or was it trying to get into like a BBC or any of...
I think the goal was to kind of build some momentum in Manchester and then make the move back down to London.
Right.
But before I did that, because I'd also bought a flat in Manchester as well, so I was under financial pressure to pay the mortgage. I was only like 21, 22 at this time. So I think that the sensible part of me made me go and get a corporate job. And PR was a kind of a natural fit because it's a lot of the journalistic skills that you pick up, research, writing, sometimes creative, even in B2B and corporate PR. So I just, it's just how it went.
What would you say was the most important thing that you learned in that first B2B PR career job, rather?
I had some really, really good bosses. And they really spent a lot of time with me editing my work. One of my kind of direct boss was a guy called Oliver, and he really spent time with me editing press releases, showing me the craft and the art of a good press release, how to copyright for different audiences and different clients as well, how you work with clients. So I think that I learned a lot. So
that was like a training ground.
Definite training ground. And even the art of pitching. I remember once this is in the days when you used to pitch journalists on the phone. I sent a journalist this press release and I followed up, and she took me to school. She was like, this pitch doesn't have this, it doesn't have that. I need this, I need that. Like, she spent about 20 minutes, I don't know, ruining my pitch.
but telling you how to do better.
Telling me how to do better. And we really bonded and we got on really well. And then after that, I got loads of coverage because I did exactly what she told me. I really listened hard and I corrected myself. And I took the L. And, we developed a good relationship. From then on, I got great coverage from her. But that was kind of a pivotal moment when I was like, yeah, you actually just have to listen to the audiences.
Yeah, that makes sense. How long did you spend there?
I think I was there for about, I want to say a year and a half.
Okay.
Interestingly, I'm still in touch with actually my two bosses, like regularly. And funnily enough, we had a client and I had coffee with him this week. So I really made, it's the power of connections. I really made some really
years.
Very long time. I'm pretty old now. But yeah, 16, 17 years later, and still have them. In fact, my first ever boss in the agency is now an advisor to the company.
That's amazing. What is the longest job that you've done besides, because Iroko, I think you spent 2.5 years there?
3.5 in the end, yeah.
3.5, yeah. So before Iroko, and of course, Wimbart has been 10 years. What is the longest job that you've done?
So I guess 2 or 3 years, but Iroko felt like a long time. But I had a circuitous kind of move into Iroko because I wanted to move back down to London. I felt that, I'd been in Manchester for 7 years. I'd kind of had enough time to move, come back down south.
So after the job, the next one you were still doing
I came down, I worked in a press office, so I came in-house, worked for a couple of in-house kind of sector skills, government body things. They were okay. And again, I made some amazing friends, great contacts, learned different things about working in-house rather than an agency. And my next job I went to and then unfortunately got made redundant. And at that point I thought, you know what, I'm not just going to go and get a press job. I want a job. And at the time I was really interested in the arts. I'm like, I'm going to go and get a job in the arts. So I thought, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give myself some space. So I'll work in the evenings in a bar or whatever. And then I'll apply for jobs and go for interviews during the day so I can pay my way. And I went on to Gumtree and saw a job, and it was at the Natural History Museum. And I applied first day, got an interview the next day, started 3 days later. So, and that was probably one of the best jobs I've ever had. Like I walked there and every day, and it was like sunny, and it's like walking through South Kensington. But just walking into that environment was amazing. And I felt fortunate and lucky to be there. Like you walk into the building, it just felt special. And you've got people there who worked there for a really long time. So I loved that job, but it was only a temporary contract. But then through that, again, through my networks, I think I'm actually quite good at making connections, building networks.
Keeping relationships for years.
But someone who I worked with at the Natural History Museum had gone and got a commercial and senior role at the Jewish Museum in London. And then there was a job opening. So I went and got a job as head of press at the Jewish Museum in London.
Interesting.
And I consider myself still very fortunate because people work for free for years in the arts to get there. And I'd literally just gone bang, bang. Obviously, I'd used a lot of my experience from previous roles, but there was a real sense of luck.
If you're already doing really great, why decide to do African tech? What was so appealing about Jason and Iroko at the time? You're like, I'm going to live this fabulous life in London, in the UK, and go do something else.
I don't know. Have you ever met Jason? Jason's a compelling character, but I think actually I have a really low boredom threshold. And I was probably already starting to get a bit bored at the Jewish Museum, even though I had some fascinating experiences there, really, really interesting experiences. And it was a challenging role, but I didn't see it long term. So I think in 2011, Jason and I were friends again. He'd moved back down to London. We were hanging out with Paul again. We were all in London again, and our little merry tribe, we're all cool.
Everybody was good now.
Everyone's good. Move on. Yeah. And we were all broke together. We'd, meet up and go for a curry in Brick Lane or do whatever. But, we were all just kind of still figuring things out. And he was going back and forth to Nigeria, doing this DVD, VCD, Nollywood thing. He was back living with his mum, which is a real, it was tough for him. And then, he then made the move to Nigeria, was doing this YouTube Nollywood thing. And then he got the $3 million funding from Tiger Global. So, I think 2011, 2012. And he just called me one day and he was like, I want you to quit your job and come and join me at Iroko. I did.
Oh, that was it?
That was it.
That was the pitch, just quit your job and come?
Yeah.
But you did it because you were bored or because it was Jason, or a mix of both?
Both. And I thought actually I had to think hard because I was like, we've kind of had bad history of working together before, even now we're cool. But there's just something compelling about it. And I said to Jason, I want to travel. I want to do this. I want to, I want to have lots of experiences. And he was like, yeah, I'll make it happen. And he did.
How so? Tell me about the experiences you ended up having in Iroko.
So I quit my job, joined Iroko 3.5, 4 weeks later. 10 days later, I was living in New York.
Oh, okay.
Setting up the New York office for Iroko. I also did a lot of stuff with Nollywood stars. So did trips, again, more trips to New York. There was Nigerian Entertainment Awards, took Uche Jumbo there. She was we'd sponsored them. I did trips to Soweto, South Africa with Mama G. Did a lot of kind of consumer stuff that I'd never really done before as well. Built a team.
So wasn't it comms role specifically? It felt like it was a bit more strategy and marketing.
No, it was startup life. Yeah. It was everything.
Yeah, you have one role but you can't do everything.
And Jason's not the sort of person that you turn around and say, that's not in my job description. This is African tech now is completely different to 2011, 2012. There was no structure. It was all hands on deck and everyone we were all in it together. And we knew what had to be done, and we kind of reveled in this long hours working together, and we saw the fruits of our labor very quickly. It's not like we're toiling and putting on all these hours and we're not getting anything. We saw it. We saw what a difference we were making as well. So, I did everything from, some of the consumer stuff. I oversaw some of the kind of customer relations. I remember setting up do you remember BlackBerry groups? BlackBerry groups to connect with our customers. I did all the corporate PR. I did all the pitching myself. I oversaw kind of the blogs for Iroko and Iroking, which was the music channel, all sorts. I even got involved in some of the content decisions as well. Oversaw the website, and kind of pushed Jason as the kind of leader and the first person to really publicly talk broadly about African tech as well.
That makes sense. So as you're talking, I'm thinking, why did you leave? So I get the bottom threshold for the other jobs that you've done. I'm kind of this was a training ground. This I wanted to get into the art. This one I kind of it made me feel special because I really liked the environment and I was getting paid to be in the arts and I loved it. This I wanted to have more experiences. And then it became the job that you did the longest. So at what point did you say, this has been good. I'm having all of these experiences. I'm learning so many new things. I'm meeting all of the stars, but I want to go do something else.
Yeah, I think, again, it's more of a luck thing. So I guess I'd worked really closely with Jason for 3.5 years. And about 2.5 years in, I remember we were in South Africa and he was like, have you ever thought about, setting up on your own? I was like, are you firing me? And he was like, no, I think there's a market for you because, again, there are so many articles written about African tech now in 2024. There really weren't in 2012, 2013. It would take ages to pitch. But, Jason had been in The Economist, he'd been on Radio 4, he'd been in BBC multiple times, he'd been in Fast Company, a full double page in Bloomberg Newsweek. Like, it was really a lot of press, a lot of coverage. And some of the up and coming and other founders kind of wanted that. So they said to Jason, how, what, who's doing this? Yeah. And he was like, it's Jess. So they had actually been asking him if he would subcontract me to them.
Right.
So again, it's Jason that saw that opportunity for me. I never considered myself entrepreneurial. I never even really thought about leaving Iroko because I thought, well, there's more opportunities
having a great
for me.
Time.
Of course, I'd probably hit a glass ceiling in terms of comms, and I would probably have wanted to build a comms team under that. What would I have done after that? Like a COO type role? Who knows?
Yeah.
But then when I was pregnant, really early days, I told Jason, and because he was in London and he's my friend, so I wanted to tell him. I was really excited. He just had a baby as well, about 6 to 8 months before, and I'd spend a lot of time with Obi.
Yeah.
And Jason was like, most people are kind of a bit nervous about telling their boss, but instantly he was like, this is amazing. I'm really happy for you. Because Jason also went to university with my son's father.
Right.
So the connections were there. And he was like, maybe now's the time to actually go out on your own.
Was it scary? I mean, I assume it was. Well,
yes and no. I mean, here's the thing. I had a really easy, lucky move into starting my own business because I left Iroko and started up on my own. I don't know, I was 8 months pregnant maybe, from the kitchen table. Iroko was my first client.
Yeah.
So I wasn't doing the consumer stuff, I was doing the corporate.
Right, so you had revenue from day one.
I had revenue from day one. I wouldn't have done it otherwise. I'm not a crazy entrepreneur like that. But I think I'm lucky, but I also know it's because I proved myself again and again and again and again that I could deliver for 3.5 years, and I had an advocate and I had support.
Yeah, and what was getting the other clients like?
Easy.
Just like, hey, Jess is on her own now, so basically started.
Again, my plan was to have a baby and just do Iroko work, which I was kind of in a routine with, and maybe have 1 or 2 other clients. So I went back to work when my son was about 3.5 months old. We did a big Nollywood premiere at the BFI, the first ever on IMAX. So that was in the February. And then I was just, again, chatting to Jason, and I was like, yeah, these people have contacted me, but I just don't think I can take on any more clients. He was like, who turns down free work? So yeah, I hired someone.
Right, that sounds like it was very easy. But you also mentioned, I think I saw that your dad was a co-founder. Yeah. When did he come in?
From the start.
What was him being a co-founder? Because if you already had clients, you already had revenue, you had like inbound leads as well. What did you need your dad for at the time?
The administrative support, the emotional support. Starting a business like properly, not just having an idea, but starting a business is quite lonely. Running a business is really lonely as well. And just someone who had like 100% trust in. So someone who could help me do things like, how do you set up a company? How do I find an accountant? How do I structure certain things? How do I make sure invoices go out? All the, those types of things.
Yeah. What were the mistakes that you made in the early days of Wimbart?
I don't think I scaled fast enough.
What does scaling look like here? More customers or more people in the team?
Both. I turned down funding quite early days because I didn't want to be beholden to anyone. I'm a pretty independent kind of person. I think for a really, really, really long time, I was a glorified account handler. So I was doing all the work with my very, very small team, and we were kind of in it all together, which again is what you have to do in a startup. But I, really suffered from that, working in the company rather than on the company. So even now we're still like trying to figure out the infrastructure, staff handbook, a lot of the things that, because we were so busy growing and scaling, we just grew so fast and we didn't do any marketing. Didn't really promote ourselves. It was just through word of mouth. So I think that those are a few administrative things where I made a few mistakes, didn't scale or didn't, hire fast enough.
Right. What would you say like the top 3 moments that you're very proud of, like wins that you're like, I'm actually doing this. This is my company.
We worked with some really cool early stage startups so long ago now. When we did the Paystack fundraise announcement, first one, That was great. And we just got on clients. I think we Maria and I worked from a hotel at first, like using their free Wi-Fi. I think when we moved into our first office, which was hot desking with my friend, but that felt like a big moment. And Ernie joined us as well. So there was the three of us, and we had our 3 desks, and we were together, and we were part of a broader team. So I think that was a big moment. I think also when we won Andela as a client, again, like 2014, that was like the hot ticket.
Maria's been with me, so she worked for me at Iroko.
Oh, so all the way.
So Maria worked for me at Iroko, and then when Jason closed the London office, she went and worked somewhere else.
For a little while, got some press office experience, and then point at Wimbart was scaling. And Jason said to me, "You got to hire someone." I think she'd come along to my son's first birthday. We had a chat, and then she quit her job, and she started off doing 30 hours a week because that's all I could afford or budget for at the time. And I said, "Look, let's see how it goes for 3 months." I think that was like 8 years ago.
That's a long time. She's just your longest employee.
Yeah. She's, she has, kind of founder mentality, incredibly loyal. It's been amazing to watch her grow. She's like a real tour de force. Like, you will not mess with Maria.
Now I know how to treat her differently. But, more respect.
She is, a class act. My day one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so it makes sense to me why you decided to do it African tech, right? Because you're already in the Iroko space, and a lot of the inbound that you're getting at a time were African founders as well. But was there no point where you felt like you needed to do stuff in the UK? Because your office is still in the UK, right? You still live here.
Yeah.
So didn't you feel pressure at any point to say, hey, I want to get more, UK-focused clients, more British clients. Let me maybe like diversify. Let me have 2 different niches. Like, why really stick with African tech? Especially working from London. Yeah.
Well, I guess I've always traveled a lot, so I'll travel back and forth to the continent like 3-4 times a year, most years, other than obviously the COVID years.
Yeah.
I didn't feel the pressure to do that because I also thought that we were fortunate that we had a niche. And our niche was really we scaled really, really quickly. After COVID, funnily enough. But if you think about it, most UK PR agencies, they have to go into competitive pitches. Obviously, I think probably the ticket sizes are bigger, the size of the retainers or whatnot, the projects are bigger, but it's really, really competitive landscape. And for us, we kind of already forged our niche. And there's definitely more competition in the market, but we just couldn't keep up. So it was always odd to then think about diversifying when we already couldn't keep up. So for most of Wimbart's history, we had a client waitlist.
Right, nice.
That's weird, right? Yeah. And so we also, the best marketing strategy that we ever had, which wasn't even a marketing strategy, it was just being honest and open. People will come up to us and say, we need this, and we're like, we'd love to work with you, here's our proposal, etc. But we can't start until July or whenever it is. 2 or 3 months time, because when we work with you, we want to make sure we've got enough capacity and you get like 110% Wimbart energy.
Yeah.
And people aren't used to that from third-party professional services, really.
Yeah.
Most people are like, just take the money and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So then that made people want us even more. And people would wait, or they would say, we'll pay you even more to start sooner.
That makes a lot of sense. So you mentioned post-COVID, and I'm thinking Wimbart has been 10 years, 11?
Technically, we launched in 2016, but my son's coming up to 10, so yeah, I guess.
So about 10 years. At what point did you really, if you think about the entire 10 years or 9 years, what was the scaling point per se? Was that year 5, year 6, year 3?
I think there was a period, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, where we won 2 or 3 really big retainers. And that helped us scale. So it helped us move we went from hot desking to a shoebox office. And I mean, it was cozy. And then we won 2 or 3 retainers, which allowed us to invest in 2 or 3 members of the team at one time. Usually it was just one person, you win 2 or 3 clients, you bring on one person, it would go from there. And it allowed us to move into a bigger office as well. So yeah, I think that was kind of probably maybe just before COVID, actually.
It's 2019.
Yeah. But before that, it had always been kind of conservative growth. But I was always very much focused on generating revenue, generating profit.
Right. So it's always making money. So you didn't necessarily feel like the business was not growing as long as that.
Always organic growth, but we were every single month profitable.
That's very nice. Every year.
Yeah, until maybe there was a couple of months in the year that was 2023. Where we definitely struggled, but we built up cash reserves.
Yeah, you talked about Wimbart, everything kind of went really well throughout the journey from the beginning. Most entrepreneurs were the first 6 months it was really hard. We had to do it, but it felt like it was good all through. Was there any big challenge, any specific this is a pivotal moment, this is something that can like threaten the business or you, I felt like couldn't keep going?
No, I've never felt I couldn't keep going. There's definitely been challenges. I think maybe now we're chatting, I'm looking at it with rose-tinted specs. There's definitely been challenges. You know, we've made some bad hires or there's been some fallouts. Not actually massive. Again, like this is why it's important to have a community and network and you speak to other founders, because something that you think is really, really bad, like it might have happened 20 times to someone else. So I think I've had to grow and kind of take things on the chin a bit more as well. But there, you know, we've had, you know, good times and bad times. It's never been like, oh, everything's easy. Everything is really hard. But because I went into it thinking everything will be really hard, I am going to put everything into it. That's not been a challenge. 2 years ago, my dad, my co-founder, died, and that was quite tough. But even then, like, we carried on. And I think probably having the business helped. But he'd been ill for about 2 years. So actually the struggle was more spending my time between London and Norwich, where he lived, traveling back and forth. So I would work all through the week, and then on a Friday I would drive 3.5 hours to Norwich, spend time with him either at home or when he was in a hospice, spend time with him in the hospice. I would work from the hospice, catch up on my emails and everything. And I have my son as well. My son traveled with me and came with me a lot as well. So I think that was probably the biggest challenge, but I also realized that I was very good at keeping the two very separate. So nobody knew.
Really? Nobody in the office? Not even Mariana?
Maria knew towards the end, but no.
Yeah. Did he change anything about you?
No.
So you're still the same person before your dad died and after?
100%.
Interesting. How did you manage that? Most people experience grief like that, especially for people they're very close to.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, something in me changed.
I think probably because, like, my dad was like my twin. Like, if you see pictures of us, we look exactly the same, although he's like, you know, bigger, blacker. But we were very, very similar in a lot of ways. And I was like really fortunate to have as much time with him as I did, and also build a business together as well. So I kind of just was like philosophical about it in that, yeah, it's awful. Like it's the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life, but I can't not keep going because he would not expect that at all. And I don't need to change as a person. Like he was really happy. We were happy together. I'm happy with myself actually as a person, so I didn't want it to change me. Of course, I have my like grief moments. You know, it was tough, but I have amazing like my work team, my friends, my family. I had a really amazing support system as well. But it's not worth changing over.
Yeah,
it's like fundamentally like I need to keep going.
It's part of the story.
It is part of the story, and it was definitely like super emotional. But I kind of surprised myself that I was able to
compartmentalize.
Yeah. I'm very good at compartmentalizing, so much so that I was like, oh, am I a sociopath? But, you know, we have to carry on.
Yeah.
And my dad was kind of a stoic kind of person as well. And he had dealt with all sorts of adversity in his career before he helped me set up Wimbart. So I see myself as kind of like, it's an extension of that, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a very profound thing. Yes, also one of the things you just said to the camera. You think about yourself now as a business builder, not just like a PR agent or someone who does comms. What was that switch like? And I mean, you still run a PR agency. Yeah. So what does that actually mean now for you?
Good question. It's tricky because as I mentioned before, I was essentially a glorified PR girl for a very long time. But then I was also business building. I have this amazing senior team, all women, this amazing senior team who've been with the company for various periods, but like minimum 3 years. So they get me, they know what the vision is, they know what needs to be done. They've grown in their own careers as well, whilst at Wimbart as well. So it's allowed me to now take a big step back, focus on new business, focus on operations, all the kind of, to be honest, it's difficult because it means I have to do the boring stuff.
Yeah, so the stuff your dad used to do.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't even do that much as well. Like, he did and he didn't. But I'm doing all the things to really push the company forward a lot more. So
less of the PR technical skills and just more of the relationships.
Relationship building, because before I was just, you know, a blockage. Fabulous blockage, but a blockage because someone was waiting for me to review a campaign plan. Someone was waiting for me to write a press release. I can't do everything, and I don't want to do everything, and I shouldn't. You know, everyone else needs to grow. One of the things that we say at Wimbart is it's about accountability. If you're going up in your career, if you get promoted, you have more accountability. So it's okay to take the L, but what are you going to do? How are you going to do it next time? How are you going to mitigate for next time as well? What's the learning? What's the lessons as well? So I'm fortunate that now, I guess, end of last year, early this year, I've been able to take more time away from client meetings and put them towards business building as well. And one of the issues for a really long time was that, I was intentional about calling Wimbart for a reason. Firstly, I was thinking long term. If I ever want to sell the company, it's much easier to sell a company that has a name rather than Jessica Hope PR, because then it's very, very personal.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wanted to do is de-emphasize myself, because people always want to deal with the boss, and I couldn't do everything, especially at any one time. Even now we have like 24 retained clients, and then we have projects. So it's really, I can't be on every call. I can't even be on all the kickoff calls. I can't commit myself to these like regular check-in things all the time. So I've been able to take a step back from that day-to-day stuff.
Yeah, it's the company. It's not just me.
Yeah, if a client's coming into the office, I'll try and make sure I'm there. I'll come and say hello, but I also am aware that I don't want to, I guess, keep the attention on me
Away.
because everyone else needs to shine. And the funny thing is that I had one client, I still have him as a client, and for ages it was great, but I was trying to do too much because I thought he would only want me working on his account. He just said, look, Jessica, you can't do everything. I would suggest that you start farming off those bits to someone else on the team and you just focus on these bits. And that was kind of a pivotal moment in terms of, even my clients are saying, you can't do everything. He was also like, you're a useless admin. You can't do all this back and forth admin stuff, which is fine. And he said it in a kind of jovial way, but he recognized my strengths.
Yeah.
And I have to recognize my strengths. My strengths aren't, sending diary invites for journalists or back and forth, Goes back to that like short attention span.
Yeah. Do you think about doing a lot of PR for the company, or is that just for your clients?
Just for the clients. PR people are the worst at doing their own PR.
Why?
So here's the thing. I'm really basic in that I think that the best PR for a PR company is your last campaign and your client list. I honestly don't think that we should be spending agency time doing loads of PR for ourselves, because we have grown. So we've worked with over 130 different companies over the years.
That's a lot of companies.
A lot of companies. I mean, some of them are just projects, fundraise announcements or crisis comms or something else, but 130 companies and counting. That's come from not having to do any PR or marketing. That's because someone has recommended.
And someone has saw the work of the
word of mouth is been the one. Definitely when there's quieter periods, we said, okay, how can we promote ourselves more? It's not like we don't believe in PR, but I am...
I mean, obviously that's what you do.
That's what we do. But my team will tell you how I am a broken record about the fact is that our new business strategy should be client retention and our clients recommending us to others. That's the best.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I mean, I speak at some events, and that's part of that kind of business and leadership journey. I'm a really nervous speaker. And when I say nervous, really nervous public speaker. But I've forced myself to do it over the years, because I do think that when I start speaking and I speak passionately and authoritatively about business or my company or other people's companies, it's infectious.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of founders in this space are looking for, I think. They need someone to match their energy, and that's one of the things that I think I'm pretty good at. I'm also quite good at like taking energy out of the room as well. But in terms of PR, we have done articles before, we've pitched ourselves, we do some thought leadership, but even with our social media, I see other agencies and they've got 10 pictures, thought for the day, what is PR? And I'm thinking, oh, we should do that. And every time I think we should do that, we've got 3 new clients that start with us. So I'm like business first, revenue first, everything else is about
customers
vanity
first.
metric. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. What would you say is the biggest lessons you've learned as an entrepreneur over the last 10 years?
I think biggest one I've learned is not to hire in haste. I made a couple of hasty hires over the years, maybe more than that. I mean, everyone says this, so I don't think I'm alone in doing it. But yeah, I made some bad hires, well, not great hires. So I think that's been a mistake. I don't think I scaled fast enough. But then also thinking about it, all the people who were telling me to scale, I should do this, do that, was often men. And often men who don't look after their kids, as in they're on a plate, like they look after them in terms of they pay the bills.
Yeah, no primary
but they're not
caregiver.
the primary caregiver.
Yeah.
So I would often, have all this kind of, I guess, noise about how I should be building and scaling the company from people who, if they had the same responsibilities that I did of being a primary caregiver and wanting to be an integral part of my son's life, they would not be able to have achieved what I have. They're fortunate they have like 3 nannies, a wife at home, mothers-in-laws, all sorts of other things to help them. So I wish I had scaled a bit more aggressively, but not as aggressively
as there.
because I wouldn't have wanted to, I guess, sacrifice the time that I've had and continue to have with my family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's just mistakes along the way. I think most of them have been small annoying ones that are cumulative rather than there isn't one which I was like, oh, that was a huge issue or drama yet. I mean, give it time. And I try and be philosophical about everything. There's clients that we haven't won and I'm like, that's annoying. Or I thought, should we have tried a bit harder in the presentation or, all sorts of things. But no, I think small, cumulative, annoying, picky mistakes along the way, but you have to make them. I don't think I've met anyone who hasn't made a mistake in business.
Of course. Yeah, but lessons don't always come from mistakes as well. Sometimes it's like, retrospectively, if I think about how I viewed this in hindsight, I can take this lesson out for myself. Like, if I was going to do it again, I would repeat the same thing because it worked.
100%. And it's actually so it's thinking about what the mistakes are and learning from them. I think one of the things that a lot of people do, and I include myself in this, and maybe I don't know if you do as well, you actually don't take any time to think about, celebrate the successes because you're like,
you do them in a minute
win a
and
new
then
project,
go for it.
go, okay, cool. Yeah. And you're not celebrating not just yourself but with your team. So I think that's important. We have a Slack channel, a Wimbart called Thanksma, where we actually just celebrate each other, and it could be thanks for helping with this. Thanks. We try and embed it a lot more in the Wimbart culture as well, because it's so easy to get bogged down in this person did this or they didn't do that. But what we want to do is like, okay, yes, this person might have done that, but also someone did something fantastic. In fact, I know that every day someone at Wimbart does something fantastic. And this goes back to a milestone. Actually thinking about it now, I think that at the point that I don't really know what coverage is coming in for a client because there's so much great coverage. For we might have 3 or 4 press releases go out 1 week, and it could be like 2 or 3 TechCrunch articles. It might be something in the FT. It could be a big piece in Tech Cabal. It could be we've secured a slot. I don't really know. Whereas before, when we were just really, really small, I would know every single piece of coverage. Yeah. And now there's too much. There's too much for me to celebrate, and I'm happy with that.
That's fantastic. That's really, really fantastic. My last question for you, Jess. When you think about the next 5 years, would you still be doing Wimbart? And what would the company be like then?
It will definitely be, I think it will grow. I think we've probably, the last 6 months, we've definitely contracted a little bit in relation to the market because the market has not been great. But I think that we're in a good position to scale. We might consider what small acquisitions look like in order to increase our presence, physical presence. We definitely want to work with more international brands, helping them with that sort of channel into sub-Saharan African
right. Not just the African to the world, but the world to Africa kind of client.
Definitely. I don't know, with everyone, you have to think about what your exit strategy is. I don't think Wimbart is quite there yet in terms of being acquired by a bigger global agency, but we're definitely working towards that. So that includes the kind of growing professionalism of the company, making sure we have all the checks in place. Like, we're starting to do our own due diligence now. So then 2, 3, 4 years down the line, if someone came and looked at Wimbart forensically, as you would do during due diligence, we'd be like, yeah, tick, 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 tick. So that's the longer term plan. And I think that as a company, even if we do a couple of acquisitions maybe, or even one, and we scale, I think that Wimbart would be a very exciting proposition for a big global agency, because they could literally just go in and have a huge chunk of the market. Let me just give you a point of scale there. I think it was that big chunk of a big bumper year, 2022, 2023, when it was like 5.9 billion had been raised in African tech. Wimbart had announced almost $1 billion of that in terms of the fundraise announcements. So 20% of the kind of fundraise announcements came through Wimbart. And I think that's quite a compelling proposition for a big global agency. But we're not there yet. We're building towards that maybe. We'll see.
That's very fantastic. I know I said that was the last question, but I have one more. I was just thinking as you were talking, that we talked a lot about the business. And obviously because it's been a big part of your life, but you also talked a lot about your son. And so I want to just segue a little bit into personal life. How have you taken care of yourself in the 10 years and your family of building this business?
I don't know if I have, actually. I'm kind of a crash and burn kind of character. So I'll work really, really hard and then I'll just crash. I don't think that that's a sensible way to live. and I'm not doing that in a braggy kind of tech bro way, like, oh, I never see my kids or anything. I do. I spend a lot of time with him. But he is, so my son, he's also now at the age where he starts traveling with me. So the last 2 years, he's come to Africa Tech Summit with me in Kenya.
I've seen him in a lot of events as well.
He comes to events. He actually worked on the front desk at Africa Tech Summit this year.
Oh, nice.
Head of stickers.
Head of stickers.
Self-appointed. And it was funny actually because I was at a party and I was speaking to some private equity guy and Max came up to me and he's like, I can't speak, I've got to go and speak to someone else. And this guy said, oh, do you know this boy? I said, that's my son. He said, oh, he helped me out on the front desk yesterday he built me a piece of Lego for something.
Oh, that's cute.
So I'm fortunate that I have been able to grow the business alongside him. But you do have to make sacrifices. You know, there's plenty of times when I've just been exhausted or he's just watching me in front of my laptop or on the phone or having to make phone calls, or every holiday we have, I've got to take a call, I've got to do a pitch, I've got to do something else. So it has been really hard to juggle that. And I wouldn't say I feel guilty, I feel a bit of guilt, but then I try and like balance that with he gets to travel a lot and do cool stuff as well, and hopefully
which is one of the common memories you have with your dad, right? Traveling.
The
so
traveling side of
to do the
things,
same thing.
you know. So and he's well behaved and he's great, and you know the community that we're operating in is very welcoming and accepting as well. I mean, I was at an event the other day and someone was like, oh, it's Max's mum. I was like, I'm sorry, I'm a person in my own right. But that's the kind of level of acceptance, and people, you know, are great. And that's the whole thing about our community. It's growing, and hopefully more people will do that as well. I think I have a certain level of privilege because I'm older and the boss. Like, if I bring my kid, you just have to accept him.
No, we have to do with it.
But then actually, I'm not apologetic for it, but even when we go to events, I always check in advance. I say, or I say to people, I understand if you don't want, you know, a 7-year-old boy with a bag of Lego at your kind of elitist dinner party or whatever. And everyone's always like, yeah. So it hasn't been easy. I think me having a family has also helped me in terms of how I structure the company. In terms of we have, you know, flexible working for parents. There's lots of parents at Wimbart, you know.
I saw one yesterday actually. He was with Istrola with his son.
Yeah, when you came into the office yesterday, we had our newest baby Wimbart, and I had, you know, an hour's worth of cuddles. And I actually, this will make you laugh. And this, I think, is like how we are at Wimbart as well. We had a new business kickoff client. I know she's cool, but she's there for business and professional environment. But I actually went into the office, took the baby into the office, and the meeting stopped. And all the Wimbarts were all over the baby. It's that familial thing.
Oh, the Wimbart.
But this is also like, because we're dealing with humans. So our client is human, the team is human. We're celebrating the fact that babies come into the office. You know, the mum's brought the baby all the way in. And that's the human element that is really important. And I think once you've gone through having a baby, building a family, understanding that not everything is like 24/7 work, that you can celebrate those things. And, you know, I very much like, I want to be able to have both. And I'm fortunate that I've made tons of friends and amazing network, and my son is kind of part of that network as well. But it does take a lot of work. And I think people think it's easy, and it's not. And I made a lot of sacrifices, which I'm happy that I've made. But I think that now I'm kind of happy to celebrate them now and reflect on them.
Yeah, that's fantastic. The very last thing, was there anything that you wanted to share about yourself or the business or both that I didn't ask you so you couldn't share?
Oh, good question. I don't know. I mean, I could talk forever about my company.
I know, I noticed.
Yeah.
So maybe about you.
About me. You know what? I think one of the things I've learned about myself as I've grown in business, and I'm really fortunate that I've had amazing clients that I've learned entrepreneurial and business skills from. I said before, I never considered myself entrepreneurial or a business person. I've been fortunate that I've been able to learn almost in stealth mode from some of the African tech's biggest like players. So I consider myself really fortunate. Someone was saying, like, how would you describe yourself? And I think, sometimes I can be a bit over enthusiastic and I can be a bit intense. And that's not everyone's cup of tea. But I think also that's part of like the company's and my USP. Other than, you know, my USP of having ridiculous amounts of blonde curly hair, I think energy and intensity and sincerity goes really far in the business. And that's one thing that I think that's not just me, but my senior team, lots of the Wimbarts have this level of intensity and energy, and we're bringing energy all the time. And I don't think that you can't measure energy. You know, it's not a KPI. People, you either care or you don't.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of unapologetic about that as well. And I've often wondered, is this gonna hurt the company, or is it gonna make the company as well?
What makes it unique?
Makes us unique. And yeah, I think that, you know, the level of authenticity, and everyone knows I speak my mind. I don't do things I don't really want to do, and I certainly don't like hype anyone up that I don't think is worth it as well. So yeah,
Just you.
I am just me in terms of, if we speak in a professional setting, I'm not that much different to who I am in real life.
True.
At all.
Yeah.
Of course, if I went somewhere super corporate, maybe there's like some, home training that I have. But like, I am like authentic to a T.
Yeah. Very nice. Do you know one of the reasons why I really wanted to speak with you, because I find your story very inspiring. Even now that I have, like, more so now that I've actually listened to it, I kind of like been able to chat the part of like, oh, this is how it actually started. There isn't a lot of women who are doing amazing things in business, unfortunately, especially in African context. And so it's always great. And I think it's very unique that you've just crafted this space in PR. Like, we're in the African tech scene and everybody's doing a startup. Everybody's doing. So when I see someone who's like, oh, this is like, Wimbart is actually doing PR and they've done it for years consistently and built a reputable brand, I think that is really fantastic and something for people to aspire to, because there are a lot of people who are still trying to figure out, what do I want to do and what will my place be like in the industry. And so people see people like you do stuff like, okay, maybe if I want to end up in agency, that's not so bad. Maybe if I want to build my own company as a third party, that's not so bad. If I want to be a founder too, I can also do that. So I think like you are playing such an important role, and it's very inspiring for people like me who are telling stories.
But I think that's the journey, right? It's about listening to other people's journeys, but not fixating on what your journey has to be. And it's also, there are certain things where you've just got to be in the room. A lot of the things that we've discussed today, it's luck.
Yeah, it's
luck.
It's the connection, it's the people.
Connection.
Yeah.
People, I am so fortunate for so many people who have wanted to do things to help me along the way. Like, so many people. One person once did something that really like took the wind out of my sails. I was like, I was shocked, because I've always been so fortunate that people have wanted to push me in a good way, like do well. And I am the same.
But that's
as well.
such a huge testament to the quality of work that you put in and the way that you handle relationships, because not everybody will just like push people that they meet.
That's it, because I think that, again, because I'm quite an intense person, I'm quite good at building intense working relationships with people.
That must be a superpower.
They accept my idiosyncrasies, they accept my little ways, right? And they may or may not enjoy it, but they accept it because they can see that fundamentally I care, and the quality of work and the focus is there. And this is what I think is really important to think about for anyone who wants to do whatever you do. You don't have, so many people talk about their brand. You don't need to talk about your brand necessarily if you're just doing great work. Now, I think some people do great work and it goes under the radar as well. So there is definitely a balance as well.
But don't prioritize the visibility over the good work.
Do you know what? Worst thing that someone could say to me is like, she didn't care, or the work was not very good. Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, because I care.
That's the best way to end this video. Yeah, that's the best way. I love it. Thank you so much, Jess, for having this conversation. Thank you guys for watching to the end. Make sure you check out Wimbart. I'll put the link on the description. And don't leave this channel without subscribing. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.